Today we talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. We talk about San Diego Comic-Con, including that news, and a lot more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 222 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
As slow of a news week as this has been, we'll muddle through somehow, he said sarcastically. Well, we can start with Deadpool-Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to talk spoilers, not going to talk about anything about the movie itself because
the memes have told us no spoilers.
Exactly.
No spoilers. And we always listen to the memes.
Absolutely. And I did happen to catch it Thursday. I decided to go and watch it so that just in case something slipped by, I wouldn't get caught with it and have something spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it in 3D. I didn't see it in IMAX. I watched it at my local.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty much what they promised.
Mm-hmm.
And again, worlds of cameos that we're not going to talk about, but we can definitely say at the very least that it did happen to open and break a record, being the highest opening ever for an R-rated movie.
Wow.
Which was to be expected. People have been looking forward to this. It had a great domestic opening. It had an amazing opening for the foreign market. It did really well there. It may actually break $1 billion by the time it's all over. It's going to get some more of my money because I figure sometime I'm going to have to make that drive and see this in IMAX 3D because, again, the action is where you expect it to be. I'm trying to think of what we really can say about the movie right now without spoiling too much.
It's good. Go see it.
Yeah, I would say that, although I have heard some people say things like, well, it's not a perfect movie, which honestly, everyone who likes a movie, but they feel like they have to soften it up because it's not Shakespeare, it's not To Kill a Mockingbird.
Shakespeare is not perfect.
It's not Citizen Kane, whatever. You have that situation where somebody has to say, well, it's not a perfect movie, but I really liked it. So it's like, okay, I get it. It's like you liked it, but you don't feel comfortable saying that you liked it. You still have to be a reviewer, which does lead me to something, and I've been guilty of this myself, and I'm working to be better, more like you, because, of course, geek colored glasses for everything for you, and I think I see it more because when I hear people talk about movies, I see it more on YouTube and on other social media than talking to people face to face. And so I always just make the assumption that everybody's talking about movies in a certain way, which is like a reviewer. And I'm starting to get the idea that maybe that's not the case. Most people, they watch a movie, they like it. They don't really go online and talk about it. I think that the people who do, and obviously I'm guilty of that because here I am, but I feel like some of the problems that we're running into now as far as audiences are concerned is because they go into movies not as someone who's going there to enjoy it, but as someone who knows they're going to talk about it on TikTok in a couple of hours. And so they go in there as a reviewer. And we've talked about this before. I've always felt that being an actual reviewer of art of any type requires a certain skill set. It's not just giving your opinion. There are certain things you have to understand about any kind of art that you're doing reviews for. And so I feel everyone has a right to their own opinion. But at the same time, I feel if you're going in there believing that you have to look at it as a reviewer and not as someone who's a fan, you're going to miss out on being able to enjoy the movie. And honestly, I feel like that is the problem with a lot of the stuff you see online and people who are having issues with films because, again, they're not going in just to enjoy it. They're not putting their geek-colored glasses on and enjoying it. They feel like while they're watching it, the clock is running. So they got to break things down. What's good about it? What do they not like about it? And maybe we need to do less of that and more of, hey, let's go in and just watch a movie and enjoy it.
Yep.
On the same vein, I think one of the biggest problems Hollywood has right now is that they're under the impression that the majority of the movie watching audience happens to be the people who are going online and doing YouTube videos or YouTube shorts or going on TikTok and talking about film. I don't think
those are just the people with the loudest voice.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, the people who like watching Sharknado aren't going online and talking about how wonderful Sharknado is. They know how wonderfully awful Sharknado is. So they watch it and they can keep quiet about it.
Yeah, they're just going to enjoy it. And I feel like this has been since the 90s with Ain't It Cool News and how everyone was weighing in on movies, which to some degree was a good thing because there were movies that wound up getting made that probably wouldn't have got made in the first place, like The Lord of the Rings. But at the same time, I think if Hollywood spends a little bit too much time paying attention to that, in a sense, I feel like that may be part of the problem we're running into now with movies. Is this idea that following the online critics and trying to cater to them is the same thing as making stuff for your audience. And I feel like those are two different buckets. I'm hoping that Hollywood drifts away from that a little bit. They should still listen to me. I don't know if they listen to me now, but if they don't, maybe they should listen to me more. But yeah, maybe not pay as much attention to that. And maybe for the rest of us, get a pair of your geek-colored glasses, just go in and enjoy stuff.
Yes.
Oh, why not? I do want to talk a little bit about something we talked about a couple of weeks ago that I haven't really followed up on. There was an issue with a certain writer. There was a 4-part podcast that was done on him. We talked about Neil Gaiman and that issue. And I wanted to revisit it for just a minute. I don't want to dwell on it. But I wanted to revisit it because I hadn't said anything about it last week. And I have been following things. And I've noticed, first of all, that no major news organization of any stripe has said anything about any of this. Not that I think that Neil Gaiman has a hold on all of media and can just shut anything down. I think something else is going on here. Now, I hadn't listened to the podcast yet, to that 4-parter. I was out of town last weekend. I meant to sit down and listen because I felt like at the very least I needed to have a better idea of what was being said and what supposedly Neil Gaiman had said so that I could speak more intelligently about this if there was more to be said about it. Now, although I didn't listen to the podcast, Vera Wilde of the Council of Geeks did listen to it. And she noticed a bunch of really weird things about the podcast.
Inconsistencies or?
Yes, lots and lots of inconsistencies. Now, not to say that these women were lying or that Neil Gaiman's perfectly innocent or that Neil Gaiman is perfectly guilty. There's a bunch of stuff going on. But as Vera put it, and the video she did, which I'm going to link in the show notes, because I don't want to do a brief synopsis of it because, one, I feel like it would not do justice to the amount of work and thought and preparation she did for this video. But I also feel like you really do need to listen to it to understand everything that's going on. And since she put the work into it, go watch that. But it shows the complications around a lot of these situations and that it's not always cut and dry. And especially when someone who is supposed to be reporting the news, if they don't do their due diligence, they can actually wind up muddying the waters more than they're bringing clarity to a situation, especially with the things that were said in the podcast and the way that the podcast was done. It certainly makes this a more complicated issue than it needed to be otherwise, and could wind up, in a real sense, silencing a couple of voices that deserve to be heard. Again, like I said, I'm going to put in a link into the show notes for the YouTube video that Vera put out. She did an amazing job. She was very thorough. It's very well thought out. Anyone who's interested in understanding this situation top to bottom, that's the place to go. And so I'm going to go ahead and make that as a recommendation. But another reason why I was thinking about all of this is because, well, in the weirdest transition ever, let's talk Comic-Con.
Oh, yeah.
So
we're coming out of Comic-Con.
We are coming out of Comic-Con, and I did want to talk about the Doctor Who panel briefly. It was a Hall H panel, but it was a panel that was shared with Star Trek. So it was Star Trek / Doctor Who. So they were
Okay.
both there on the stage simultaneously. They shared
Yes.
and
And that has happened in comic books. Yeah.
and apparently there's some kind of a video game that's going to be
Really?
involving both the world of Doctor Who and Star Trek. And of course, we had the Star Trek reference in this last season of Doctor Who in Space Babies, and there have been some Star Trek references in Doctor Who in the past. And there was also a trailer that was Doctor Who X Star Trek, how both shows are about friendship in space. So it's like all about friendship. And so they're really playing off the combination of the both of those things. And with what we talked about before, the idea of Max and Disney Plus being as part of a package, and with this idea that Paramount Plus is being shifted off somewhere else, there's this possibility that they might all in some strange way wind up on the same channel,
Oh, okay.
on the same streaming package.
See, I have Hulu and Disney together. So I didn't know that Max and Disney was a...
Oh, yeah, that's something that's coming up now.
Oh, okay. It's on
But I don't think Disney is going to be buying Paramount Plus because they're really pushing it as far as this idea of having a monopoly is concerned. I think they're going to get to a point where, oh my God, you own too many platforms. This is too far.
We'll have to break you up like AT&T.
Yeah, we don't want to get this thing FCC'd, basically. But I thought that was really interesting that they wound up splitting a Hall H, which makes sense. There's not a lot of news that's coming out, but there was enough that they could fill an hour together. They talked more about the war between the land and the sea, which I thought this was going to be a Martha adventure. It's apparently not. It's going to involve the actor who played Martha's sister, Trish,
Oh,
or
fun.
Tish, her name was Tish, and the actor who played Alonzo.
Alonzo.
Now, my understanding is they're not playing those same characters, though. They're going to be playing different characters.
Oh, just the actors. Okay.
And this is the thing, again, that made me start thinking about something we talked about before, which is we are getting Jenna Redgrave again as Kate Lethbridge Stewart, and
The subordinate that
she apparently is having a day that she's
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're both playing.
The HR nightmare.
And again, I've heard some people going, "Oh, does that mean we're going to see maybe an expansion of their relationship?" No, please, no, please. Well, we're not going to go through that again. We've talked about this and the problems that I personally have that most people, if you think about it for 5 minutes, would have about this. But now my understanding is this is going to be like a 5-episode miniseries.
Okay, so limited.
Yeah, it's going to be a limited series, which makes a lot of sense because it's a good way of generating some content, but it doesn't stick you completely in the weeds as far as having to come up with an ongoing show. You can tell a nice compact story, which was something that Torchwood started to do. I think it's a good idea. It's a good way of introducing more things into the Who-niverse, as they call it. Obviously, they are wanting to bring in more stuff for the Silurians because on the Doctor Who panel, we did get to see a little bit of the first few minutes of the Christmas special. And Silurians were involved in that. So apparently Silurians are going to be playing more of a role in Doctor Who. And again, this might be a nod to what will have happened in the Christmas special because I'm not exactly sure when this series is supposed to come out. I don't know if they've even started filming it yet, but hopefully we'll know something about that soon. But the Warner/DC panel was disappointing.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. So must not have got much coverage or...
No, because it didn't really say a whole lot. The only thing they really mentioned was they showed the new logo for DC Studios, and they decided to use the old school DC logo from the comic books with the stars around it.
All right.
And that was about all that was really announced, and that was it. And I'm like, that's a lot of nothing burger to do a panel on. Especially in a situation where people are a little bit nervous about what is DC going to have to offer. But we do have to talk about the Marvel panel.
Which overshadowed everything.
Yeah, because that became... Which it didn't start out that way. Because there were some things at the beginning people were questioning that I was questioning. Because no mention of the Agatha series coming up. They said, we're only really going to talk about 3 things. And I'm like, really? And there were some interesting things about those 3 things because we got a little bit of a taste of the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out, which is going to be called First Steps. Nothing's really been filmed yet, so there's nothing to show, but there was some concept art. And it definitely has that feeling of 60s retro future look to it. It's like, what did they think the future was going to look like in the
60s? Yes.
That's the artwork that we're looking at. And we did get a look at the Fantastic Car, which definitely looks really 60s. And they floated it across the stage. And we did get to see the stars of the Thunderbolt.
Of
the Thunderbolts. Which has an asterisk next to the title. That was basically it. They didn't really say a whole lot more about it, except that, hey, it's coming. And then they decided to talk about the Russos coming back. And we had talked about on the show that there were these rumors that the Russos wanted to come back and Marvel was saying no. As it turns out, complete and utter total lie.
Right.
They lied about the whole thing. That was the plan all along.
Red herring, subversion.
Yeah, they just flat out lied about it. One of these days, I'm going to realize, Marvel, they'll just lie if they have to. Rule number 1, Marvel always lies. They brought the Russos on, and they said that they were going to do 2 movies. They were going to do a different version of the Kang Dynasty, but it wasn't going to be the Kang Dynasty because let's not rehash all of that. And then we were going to see the Secret War, this new version of the Avengers movie that's not the Kang Dynasty, is going to come out in 2026. And Secret Wars is going to come out in 2027, which is going to be a very special Marvel movie for me because it will be the first Marvel movie that I will, regardless of what time I get to see it, I will not have to pay full price for a ticket because I'll be able to get the senior discount. I will be 60 years old in 2027. And from that point on, all my movies I'll be getting with the senior discount. So it's been going on that. Forgive me as I bask in my small pool of existential dread, but here we are. But I am bearing the lead. What about that 2026 movie? Well, it's called Avengers Doomsday. So they have replaced Kang the Conqueror with Dr. Doom.
And who could play Doom?
Well, here's where Marvel lied again because they said, this is all we were going to tell you. But then they were like, oh, let's just add one more thing. And a bunch of Dr. Dooms marched onto the stage and then one step forward. Removed his mask, and we discovered that Dr. Doom will be played by Robert Downey Jr. And everyone went insane.
Of course they did.
For a while. Until they started to think about it a little bit, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's back! He's back, and he's playing Doctor
Victor Von Doom."
Well, is he? Is he playing Victor Von Doom?
Why wouldn't he be playing Victor Von Doom?
That's a good question because he's certainly not going to be playing a typical Doctor Doom type character. We've already dealt with the multiverse, and if you dig into the comics, there was a time where Doctor Doom was a version of Iron Man. So he is Dr. Doom, but is he Victor Von Doom? Is he an evil version of Tony Stark who has become Dr. Doom? We don't.
I'd rather not. I'd rather him be Victor Von Doom.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like we don't
of
honestly
Latveria.
know. But that might not be the case. We don't really know with this situation. But what we do know, he's getting a truckload of money for doing it.
Yeah. Like, can they afford that?
Well,
we want him that bad.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You got the Russo brothers coming back to direct both these movies. You've got McSweeney, who was the writer, who's coming back. You've got Robert Downey Jr., who was the biggest actor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, coming back for reasons which, if you haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine, maybe that might be a reason for you to watch it, because there may be an explanation about Robert Downey Jr.'s return that might explain a little bit. We'll just say, maybe worth your watch if for no other reason. Not to say that I think that Robert Downey Jr. couldn't play a good villain, okay? Because allow me to remind everyone the last time he played a villain, he got an Oscar for it. He can probably play a decent villain, but it certainly means that he's got an Oscar, so no, he ain't cheap. I have heard some rumors that John Campea posted online, some things that he heard that he couldn't substantiate, but he had heard what Robert Downey Jr.'s salary was going to be. And I'm not going to repeat it because if he can't confirm it and he heard it from someone, I certainly can't confirm it. But if it's true, he's going to be one of the top paid actors in Hollywood.
Of all time.
Yeah, he's going to be in that club for 2 films. So he's going to have the opportunity of doing this twice for that kind of money. It also means that as cool as it would be to be in an Avengers movie, expect to take a pay cut if your name isn't Robert Downey Jr. because the amount of money they're talking about, from what I'm hearing, not even Disney can afford to pay anybody else that kind of money or even pay people regular salaries. I doubt very seriously that any actor is going to be able to roll in there and get favored nation status on their contract. You're not going to get what he's getting paid, which is understandable for if the amount of money we're talking about is the amount of money that he's going to wind up getting. Good for him. He's not just getting the bag, he's getting a bunch of bags. Here's the thing. You've got 2 known directors, very successful directors who had said they were done with Marvel, have been brought back. You get a writer who was done with Marvel, who was very successful, who had written a bunch of stuff for Marvel, is being brought back. An actor who said he was done with Marvel being brought back. Is it just me, or is there something very Doctor Who about this?
Gotta go back to where you started.
Yeah, because doesn't this feel like the 3 specials that we had just recently, where you brought back everybody? It feels a lot like that. Not saying that the BBC was desperate, not saying that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is desperate. I am wondering where Robert Downey Jr. is going to fall into all of this because they're playing their cards very close to their chest on this one. I think he'll make a great Doctor Doom. I just don't know what kind of Doctor Doom we're going to get. There are a lot of different options, but they're not saying. They certainly stole Comic-Con with that news. Obviously, like you said, nobody really knows a whole lot of anything else that happened except for that announcement. But what does it mean for the Marvel Cinematic Universe? I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 222. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.